I don't usually talk about my family, not because I'm embarrassed, though maybe I should be, but because once you start peeling back the layers, it's hard to stop. The quiet bitterness, the fake smiles at reunions, the backhanded compliments that linger in your mind for weeks. You'd think we were just a big family with the usual chaos, but no. There's a kind of poison that seeps in when someone in the family believes their child is worth more than yours. When every achievement your kid earns is either ignored or mocked, just because they don't wear the right last name. My name's Max. I'm 43, a single dad, and my son Liam is the one thing in my life I've never second-guessed. He's 18 now, smart, kind, a little quiet, but deeply thoughtful in a way that most people miss. He's always been the kind of kid who helps the teacher clean up without being asked, who walks his grandma across the street even if she's not his grandma. You know the type. Not flashy, not loud, just good. Liam's mom left when he was 6. That part of the story isn't dramatic. She didn't want to be a parent, and rather than fake it, she walked. I don't hate her for it. At least she didn't pretend. Since then, it's been just the two of us. We're not rich. I work in IT for the school district, solid job, but nothing glamorous. I rent a modest duplex, drive a 10-year-old Corolla, and cook 90% of our meals at home. Liam never complained. He knew we didn't have the bells and whistles like his cousins did. He saw the difference and never threw it in my face. Which brings me to them. My older sister Rachel is the kind of person who always makes sure everyone knows how hard she has it, right after showing off her new car or dropping hints about their ski house. Her husband, Todd, is a guy who made his money in real estate and assumes anyone with a regular job just isn't trying hard enough. They have twin boys, Trent and Tyler, who are Liam's age. And from the time they were all toddlers, Rachel has made sure to remind me, subtly or not, that her kids were gifted. Not just smart, not just athletic, gifted. They're being considered for early Ivy League admissions. She once told me when the boys were 12, "You should really push Liam more. He's sweet, but he seems easily distracted." It wasn't even what she said. It was the tone. Like Liam was a half-finished project I should have returned for store credit. The boys, Trent and Tyler, were always competitive. And not in the fun, let's race to the tree kind of way. More like, oh, you got A+? We got A's. It didn't matter what Liam did, student council, robotics, tutoring, they always found a way to either mock it or one-up it. If Liam brought a science project to the family cookout, Trent would roll his eyes and say, "Wow, did you Google all that?" If he mentioned a scholarship, Tyler would casually bring up the multiple offers they had already received. Over the years, Liam got used to the digs. Too used to them. He stopped bringing up his wins around family. He stopped trying to connect. And maybe that's on me too. I didn't push back hard enough. I thought it was just sibling rivalry, harmless stuff. But I was wrong. Because those boys, they weren't just mean. They were their parents' sons, through and through. Fast forward to senior year. Liam had worked his tail off. Not only did he earn a partial scholarship to a reputable state university, but he was also named salutatorian of his class. That might not seem like a big deal to some, but in our world, it was everything. He had spent the last 4 years grinding, studying late into the night, helping raise money for school programs, mentoring underclassmen who were struggling, and he finally got recognition. Rachel's reaction? Oh, how fun. The boys aren't doing the whole graduation thing. It's so overrated. We're throwing a party instead, real intimate, just close family and friends. No congratulations. No, we're proud of Liam. Just an offhanded dismissal and a thinly veiled jab. I let it go. I didn't want to spoil Liam's moment. We picked out his cap and gown together, ordered his class ring, got him a new pair of shoes. Nothing flashy, just nice enough that he felt proud walking across that stage. I told him we'd go out to breakfast in the morning, take some photos, soak in the moment. He smiled and said, "Thanks, Dad. I know it means a lot to you." That stung a little, because I could tell he wasn't letting himself be excited. Somewhere deep down, he was still bracing for someone to ruin it. And I hate that he was right. The night before graduation, I let him stay up a little late. We watched a movie, ate some takeout, and I told him I was proud. I told him again and again, because I knew what morning would bring. It wasn't just about walking across a stage. It was about the years he spent being quietly excellent in a family that only noticed noise. Around 7 a.m., I heard him in the laundry room. No footsteps, no doors opening, just silence. That thick, Heavy kind of silence that makes you sit up straight because something feels wrong. I walked in and found him standing there, holding his cap and gown. There were words written all over them, in permanent marker. Huge, messy, angry letters. Dumb kid. Doesn't belong. Enjoy your participation trophy. My stomach dropped. Not because of what was written, but because of how Liam looked. He didn't cry. He didn't say anything. He just stared at it like he had seen it coming. I guess Trent and Tyler came by last night, he said quietly. I heard something outside but thought it was just the wind. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat tightened, and all I could do was shake my head. My first instinct was to storm over to Rachel's house and drag those boys out by their entitled ears. But Liam just set the cap and gown down and said, "Let's go to breakfast." "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely holding steady. "Yeah," he said. "I don't want to pretend for people who don't care." We went to a little diner 2 towns over. Just the 2 of us. He got pancakes, I got black coffee and eggs, and for 2 hours, we didn't talk about what happened. We just talked about what comes next, his dorm, his goals, how excited he was for independence. I kept trying to hold it together, but every time I looked at him, I saw a kid who had every reason to be bitter but chose peace instead. When we got back home, I turned my phone off. I didn't want the calls. I didn't want the fake apologies. And for a while, nothing happened. Until that evening. I had just finished doing the dishes when my phone buzzed, Rachel's name. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call. Then a text. "Call me. Urgent." Then another. "What did you do?" "The principal wants a meeting about harassment and vandalism. Please call me now." I stared at the screen, heart thudding. That's when I realized something had happened at the school, and the story everyone thought they controlled, it was slipping out of their hands. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I sat down, cracked my knuckles, and waited for the fallout. The calls didn't stop. Rachel rang 6 more times that evening. I let each one go. I wasn't ready. I needed to sit with it, really sit with it, and process how far she'd let things go. It wasn't just that her kids had vandalized Liam's cap and gown. It was the years before that. The years of casual dismissal. The birthdays skipped, the school awards brushed off, the condescending, good for him, whenever Liam accomplished something. But this was public. This was cruel. This was criminal. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a different number. The school. I picked it up, and it was the vice principal, Mrs. Carney. A warm-voiced woman, probably in her 50s, with a no-nonsense tone and a habit of remembering everyone's name. "Mr. Parker?" she asked. "Speaking. Sorry to bother you so late, but I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow morning. I had a very interesting conversation with our principal, Mr. Vasquez, regarding your son." My chest tightened. "Is Liam in trouble?" No, nothing like that," she said quickly. "Actually, he's not in trouble at all. But a complaint was filed by your sister, Rachel Whitman. She claims there's been some kind of retaliation against her sons, Trent and Tyler." Retaliation? I blinked. I don't even know what that would mean. We haven't spoken since yesterday morning. Mrs. Carney hesitated. "Well, she seems to think you might have reported them for vandalism. The thing is, the school already received an anonymous tip earlier this afternoon. Someone sent in photos, very clear ones, of Trent and Tyler on your front porch around 2 a.m. last night." "What?" I leaned forward, gripping the phone. "Photos? From who?" They didn't leave a name, but they included timestamps. Ring doorbell footage, I assume. They also included a screenshot of the cap and gown with the writing on it. Needless to say, the principal is taking it very seriously. I sat back, stunned. We did have a Ring cam, but I hadn't even checked it yet. I'd been too caught up with Liam, too caught up in not making things worse. But someone had already beaten me to the punch. Mrs. Carney continued. "Mr. Vasquez wants to bring everyone in tomorrow morning. Rachel, her sons, and you. He asked me to inform you first, since you and Liam were directly affected." I let out a slow breath. "I'll be there." The call ended, and for a moment, I just stared at the dark TV screen across the room. My reflection looked older than I felt. Tired. Angry. Not the kind of anger that burns hot, but the kind that settles in your bones. The kind that doesn't go away with sleep. I opened the Ring app, and sure enough, there it was. A video from 2:03 a.m. Trent and Tyler. Hoodies on, but their faces plainly visible under the porch light. One of them had a Sharpie. The other was holding Liam's gown. They were laughing. Just before they walked away, Trent looked straight into the camera and flipped it off. I don't know what sixth sense of invincibility made him do that. Maybe it was because Rachel had always swooped in to defend them. Maybe it was because Todd taught them that money fixes everything. Or maybe they genuinely thought there'd never be consequences. I didn't sleep much that night. Liam was in his room, probably on Discord or texting his friends. He didn't bring up the incident again. Didn't even mention graduation. It was like he'd buried it already, filed it away as just another humiliation he had to take on the chin. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I wore my usual button-down and khakis. Not flashy, not sloppy. Professional, clean. The kind of outfit people didn't really notice, which was perfect, because today, I didn't want eyes on me. I wanted them on the truth. When I arrived at the school, Mrs. Carney met me outside the office. She gave me a firm handshake and led me in. Rachel was already there, pacing, phone in hand, designer purse slung over her arm. She was dressed like she was heading to a brunch photo shoot. Heels, sunglasses on her head, hair perfectly done. She barely glanced at me. "Max," she said with forced politeness. "So glad you could make it. This has all been such a misunderstanding." "I'm not here for small talk," I said calmly. "Where are the boys?" "Parking," she said with a tight smile. "Todd's dropping them off." Mr. Vasquez stepped out of his office a moment later. Tall, no nonsense, with a voice that could silence an auditorium. "Let's go ahead and start. Mrs. Whitman, Mr. Parker. Please." The meeting room was small. One long table, several chairs. Mr. Vasquez sat at the head, Mrs. Carney to his left, and Rachel and I opposite each other. I kept my expression neutral. Rachel, however, launched straight in. "I just want to say," she began, adjusting her sunglasses atop her head, "this entire thing is a little ridiculous. Boys will be boys, and I think we're blowing things out of proportion." Mr. Vasquez raised a brow. "Are you saying the vandalism didn't happen?" "I'm saying that if something happened, it's likely a prank that's being taken far too seriously. I mean, it's just a cap and gown." "It's defacement of school property," Mrs. Carney corrected. "Technically, those garments are rented and returned. Writing on them in permanent marker is destruction of property." Rachel's lips pressed together. "And according to the footage we received," Mr. Vasquez continued, "your sons were responsible." Rachel turned to me then, all faux innocence. "Max, are you the one who sent that in?" "No," I said truthfully. "But I have a copy. Our front porch camera recorded everything." She blanched, and for the first time, she didn't have a rehearsed response. Just then, Trent and Tyler walked in, all smug confidence, until they saw Mr. Vasquez's face. And the printouts on the table. Screenshots. Footage stills. One of the gown. The Sharpie writing was unmistakable. Trent paled. Tyler's jaw clenched. "But Rachel?" She went full defensive. "This is insane," she snapped. "They're kids. You're going to punish them for one silly prank? They were up all night after the party. We don't even know if they were in their right minds." Mr. Vasquez didn't blink. "That makes it worse. If they were under the influence while trespassing and defacing property, that adds another layer." "I'm calling our attorney," Rachel said sharply, pulling out her phone. "This is harassment." "No one here is harassing you," Mrs. Carney said coolly. "We're handling an act of bullying. A very serious one." Rachel looked to me again, as if pleading for backup. "Max, be reasonable. Do you really want to blow up the family over this?" That did it. I leaned forward slowly and said, "Rachel, this isn't about family. It's about you raising kids who think bullying someone on the most important day of their life is funny. And if that's how you define family, protecting them no matter what they do, then maybe blowing it up isn't such a bad idea." Her mouth opened, but I kept going. "Liam's worked his entire life to prove he's worth something in your eyes. And all he ever got was laughed at, mocked. You let your sons do this to him because you thought I wouldn't push back. Because you thought he wouldn't fight back." She looked like she wanted to argue, but Mr. Vasquez cut in. "We'll be issuing formal disciplinary action," he said, turning to the twins. "This includes suspension from school events, revocation of honors cords, and possible documentation sent to universities regarding character violations. We take harassment seriously." Trent finally spoke. "This is stupid. Everyone does pranks at graduation." "Then maybe next time," I said, "you'll pick someone your own size." They stormed out. Rachel followed, but not before turning to me and whispering venomously, "You're going to regret this." But I didn't. Because something in her voice told me she knew. For once, the consequences weren't going away. What she didn't know? That wasn't even the worst of it. Because Liam's not the only one who's been quiet all these years. And I wasn't done. When we got home that afternoon, Liam was sitting on the back porch, hoodie up, legs drawn to his chest like he used to do as a kid when something really upset him. He didn't look up when I sat beside him. The silence between us stretched out like a tightrope. I didn't want to break it too early. "They're being suspended," I said eventually. "No more graduation events. No honors. No recognition." Liam blinked slowly, but his voice came out soft. "That's not going to change anything." I nodded. "No, but it's a start." He looked at me then, not angry, not sad, just tired. I didn't want this. I didn't want them punished. I just wanted them to stop acting like I don't exist. That hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. All those years of letting the comments slide, of telling him to ignore them, of trying to keep the peace with Rachel. I thought I was protecting him. In reality, I was teaching him to tolerate cruelty disguised as family. "You shouldn't have to earn your place at the table," I said. "Not in this family. Not anywhere." He didn't answer, just leaned his head back against the siding and closed his eyes. The next week felt like walking through fog. Liam didn't attend the school's end-of-year award ceremony. He had earned recognition for his community service and academic excellence. But he told me he didn't want to sit in a room full of people who would pretend to clap for someone they wouldn't even defend. I didn't argue. I just told him I was proud. I tried to get him to talk about college, about dorm shopping, about what color mini fridge he wanted. But he kept brushing it off. The pride that once lit his face when we talked about the future had dimmed. He wasn't spiraling, just withdrawing. Quietly, like he didn't want me to notice. But I noticed. At night, I'd hear him clicking through his computer in the living room, headphones in, browsing message boards, reading articles about burnout and imposter syndrome. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. So I did the only thing I could think of. I showed up. I started making real dinners again, more than just eggs or pasta. I'd leave little notes on the fridge with quotes from his favorite shows or books. Some were cheesy, sure, but he started saving them on the corner of his desk. One afternoon, I dropped him off at the library for a study group, and while I waited in the parking lot, I pulled out a notebook and wrote something on the cover. "You're not invisible." That night, I left it on his bed with a pen. The next morning, the notebook was gone from his bed. I didn't ask, but a week later, I found it on the coffee table, filled with pages, some essays, some rants, some stories. All of them angry, all of them honest. The first line on the first page read, "They laugh like it was a game." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just smiled, and that scared me. I didn't say anything about it when he came into the room. I just gave him a look, the kind that says, "I see you." He nodded, and we left it at that. Then one morning, about 2 weeks after graduation, I walked into the kitchen and found him at the table with a giant sketch pad. Not a notebook this time, a full-on artist's pad. I didn't even know he had one. But there he was, hunched over, drawing something with sharp, furious strokes. "What's that?" I asked. He glanced up. "A comic. Kind of. About what?" He hesitated, then flipped the sketchpad around. It was a rough storyboard, simple boxes, dialogue in pencil, but the story was clear. A kid who gets mocked by his own family for being different, who's constantly told he's not good enough, who eventually builds a machine that lets him erase the voices of everyone who ever made him feel small. It wasn't subtle, but it was brilliant. His lines had force. His characters had pain behind their eyes. It wasn't just drawing, it was purging. "You wrote this?" I asked, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. He shrugged. "It's just something to keep me from going crazy." "Liam," I said, "this is incredible." He didn't smile, but there was something in his eyes. A flicker, like a match catching fire for the first time. He kept drawing. Every day, at night, in the mornings. He started turning his notebook entries into stories, some dark, some hopeful, but all painfully real. I watched the bitterness begin to evolve into something else. Voice. Not just rage on paper, but purpose. Meanwhile, the fallout was just beginning. Rachel stopped showing up to family gatherings. Not that we had many, but she used to host Memorial Day brunch every year. This time, the group text went dead silent. My mom, who had spent years trying to play peacekeeper, called me privately and said Rachel was embarrassed by how things went down. "She says you turned the principal against them." Mom whispered like it was some kind of scandal. You know how proud she was of the twins. You could have just handled this quietly. Mom, I said, they vandalized Liam's graduation robe. You still want to pretend that's just a boys will be boys moment. She didn't respond, just sighed. I just wish you two could work it out. I almost laughed. Worked it out? Like this was a tiff over holiday plans? Instead, I said, I'm not asking you to pick sides. But I'm also not going to teach Liam that silence is the cost of family. That ended the call. I stopped attending the usual gatherings after that. 4th of July. Summer birthdays. I figured if they couldn't stand to be in the same room with the truth, then maybe they never deserved to be in Liam's. But here's the funny thing about walking away from toxic people. It's quiet at first. Then it becomes peaceful. Without all the noise, I started hearing Liam again. Hearing myself again. He began submitting his comics to a couple of indie zines. Nothing big, just digital mags run by other artists. One of them featured his work with the caption, "A raw voice from the next generation. Honest, unflinching, necessary." I printed it out and taped it to the fridge. He didn't say anything, but a few nights later, he came into the kitchen and asked, "Do you think I should major in art?" "Do you think you should?" I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I think I do." We looked at each other for a long moment. "Then I think you should." He applied to switch programs. Kept his scholarship, too, since they considered art part of the same college within the university. He even got a small grant from the school's visual storytelling initiative after they saw one of his pieces. It was the first time I saw him really smile since graduation. Not a polite smile. Not a hollow thanks, Dad smile. A real one. He started helping out at the local library's summer art program. Just a volunteer gig, but it lit him up. Kids gravitated toward him, even the loud ones. He didn't try to be the cool guy. He just listened. And when they told him about bullies, or parents who didn't get them, or how their siblings made fun of their interests, he'd nod and say, "Yeah, that sucks. But it doesn't mean you stop." One day I walked in and saw a little girl, maybe 7, draw a picture of herself as a superhero, holding a giant pencil like a sword. Liam high-fived her and said, "See? You're dangerous now." That night, I stood in the doorway of his room and said, "You know, you're turning into the person I always hoped you'd become." He looked up from his sketchpad. Yeah. And not because of what they did to you, but because of how you chose to respond." He smiled again. "Thanks, Dad." Then he paused. "But just so you know, I'm not done responding." There was something in his tone, measured, steady, that made me pause. "What do you mean?" He turned the sketchpad around. On the page was the beginning of a new comic. Same style, but this time the antagonist wasn't just faceless bullies. It was family. A twisted, grinning aunt. Twin shadows with mocking eyes. A graduation ruined. And a boy, standing in front of them, holding not a sword, but a stack of paper, his story. "They made me feel invisible," Liam said. "So I'm going to make sure they're seen." And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't just healing. It was the rise. But Rachel had no idea what was coming. Because Liam was done being quiet. And so was I. Summer drifted by in that slow, sticky way it always does in our town. Ice cream trucks crawling down streets, kids riding bikes at sunset, and the quiet hum of air conditioners in every window. But under all that stillness, something was beginning to churn. Not anger. Not bitterness. Focus. Liam and I had crossed the worst of it. He was sleeping more. Smiling more. The comic pages that used to feel like an outlet for his pain had evolved into full-fledged stories with arcs, themes, even layered metaphors. His early drawings were raw and sharp, emotionally jagged. Now they were deliberate, strategic. Every frame was built with care, like he was building something bigger than just therapy on paper. And that's when I started to realize we didn't have to wait for karma. We could build it. It began when a local bookstore, Page Turner's, hosted a Young Creators Showcase. They had a small community room in the back, barely enough for 30 folding chairs and a makeshift projector screen, but it was ours. Liam submitted his work quietly, didn't even tell me until the flyer showed up in our mailbox. His submission was a short story graphic called Muted Applause. The protagonist? A boy whose family laughs every time he tries to share something he's proud of. The antagonist? A set of smiling twins who hide their cruelty behind smug grins and privilege. It wasn't subtle, but it was powerful. The day of the event, Liam stood in front of a modest crowd. Parents, kids, a few local teachers. and introduced his piece like it was just any other story. "This isn't really about me," he said, "but it's about what silence does to people. When you grow up around the wrong kind of noise, you start to think you're the one who's out of tune." People clapped. Genuinely. No one forced it. Afterward, a woman approached him and asked if she could feature his work in a local youth advocacy blog. Another man gave him a business card and mentioned he ran an after-school program for creative writing. A few kids even came up to him and asked when the next chapter would be out. I saw it happen in real time, his confidence growing, breath by breath. But the real turning point didn't come until we got home and found the email. It was from the school district. Apparently, someone had submitted a formal complaint about how the school had handled Liam's situation. The email wasn't accusatory, but it asked if I would be willing to participate in a review board to help shape future student harassment policies. They wanted me to share Liam's experience as part of their internal training series for staff. I almost deleted it. I didn't want to drag Liam back into anything. But he read the email over my shoulder and said, "You should do it." "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "They're asking you to tell the truth. That's a good thing." So I did. I spent 3 hours with the board, walking them through everything. Not just the cap and gown incident, but the years leading up to it. The digs, the favoritism, the passive-aggressive dismissals Liam endured while the twins were put on pedestals. I showed them the video footage, the photos, even printed pages from Liam's comic. The director of the board, a sharp-eyed woman named Tasha with a background in student advocacy, looked at me near the end and said, "Has your sister ever apologized?" I laughed. "She's not the apologizing type." Tasha leaned forward. "Would you be willing to submit this material to our new school culture initiative? We're working on a program to highlight systemic patterns, especially when it comes to subtle family bias bleeding into school communities. You wouldn't be naming names, but the story could help other kids who go through this." I hesitated, but Liam's voice echoed in my head. "I'm going to make sure they're seen." "Yes," I said. "Use whatever you need." And just like that, the fuse was lit. What followed was a slow, deliberate build-up, an invisible scaffold that Liam and I kept climbing without anyone else knowing. Rachel certainly didn't. She was still licking her wounds from the school board fallout. I knew from my mom's updates that her social circle had cooled. The twins didn't get the recommendation letters they expected. One of them lost a merit-based scholarship after the disciplinary action hit their record. Rachel blamed me for all of it, of course. She says you poisoned the well. My mom told me on a call one night that you turned the school against her boys. "No," I said plainly. "They did that all by themselves." Mom didn't reply, but she stopped defending them after that. Then came the next step. At Liam's suggestion, we digitized his comic and uploaded it to a free site called Panel Frame, a platform for indie illustrators. He didn't use his real name, just a username. Muted Son. We weren't expecting much. Maybe a few clicks, a handful of supportive comments. But within 2 weeks, his first story had over 8,000 reads. The comments section was filled with people saying things like, "I was this kid. Thank you. This made me cry, and I'm not even embarrassed to admit it. When's the next one?" And my favorite, "Whoever those twins were in your life, they created a monster." In the best way. I could tell Liam was still holding back, though. He would sketch until 2 a.m., pacing between pages like he was waiting for something. Some spark. Some trigger. It came, as it often does, without warning. I was browsing the community Facebook group one night, something I rarely did, when I saw Rachel's name. She had posted a long, self-pitying status. "It's so sad what this generation thinks is acceptable. My family turned on me because I tried to discipline my sons and keep them from making mistakes. Now they're being treated like criminals over a prank." Apparently, being ambitious and well-spoken makes you a bully these days. I raised leaders, not victims. The comment section was mostly silent, but I felt my blood run cold. Discipline? She rewrote history in front of everyone. And I realized this was it. This was the final push Liam needed. I showed him the post. He read it once, then again. Then he stood up, walked into his room, and came out 15 minutes later with a new sketch. It was of a wolf in sheep's clothing, elegant, smug, smiling at a crowd while whispering poison behind its teeth. Behind the wolf stood 2 hyenas, laughing and drawing graffiti across a child's graduation cap. Underneath it, the caption, "Leaders, not victims." "Post it," he said. And we did. It exploded. Tens of thousands of reads. Reposts on Reddit. Tweets. Screenshots. People were debating the meaning, asking questions, speculating on whether it was based on a true story. Some guessed the scenario outright. Others shared similar stories of toxic family dynamics and how easily bullies are protected when they wear the right mask. Rachel didn't know yet, but she would soon. Because the next comic? That one didn't even try to hide the metaphor. And Liam had plans to make sure it landed exactly where it needed to. He started compiling his work into a digital zine. We bought a domain, hired a student designer from his college, reached out to the advocacy blog that had previously featured him, and asked if they'd help promote a special project. The title? Graduation Doesn't End Abuse. Subheading: a comic series about surviving sabotage, silence, and self-erasure, told through ink. Rachel would never see it coming, because this wasn't about exposing her to strangers. This was about showing her reflection, held up so starkly, so accurately, that she wouldn't be able to lie to herself anymore. We were almost there. Just one more piece needed to fall into place. And then everything she built, the illusion of control, the curated family image, the perfect twins, would start to crack. It launched on a Thursday. We chose that day on purpose. Most of the local school staff were back in their offices preparing for the upcoming year. Parents were still deep in their post-summer routines. Camps ending, supply shopping beginning. Social media feeds were full of back-to-school excitement, new beginnings, proud parent posts. Into that noise, we dropped Graduation Doesn't End Abuse. The website was simple, elegant, black, white, and crimson accents. The homepage displayed the comic anthology in a clean, scrollable layout. At the top, the now iconic image, a sheep-faced woman bearing sharp wolf teeth, surrounded by her sneering cubs, vandalizing a graduation cap that read Hope. The caption beneath read, "This is not fiction. This is memory." And underneath that, a collaboration between a survivor and the witness who finally spoke. It went viral within 24 hours. Not instantly. This wasn't the kind of content you could click past. But slowly, steadily, it started spreading like ink on wet paper. Reddit picked it up first, naturally. r/raised by narcissists, r/entitled parents, r/off me chest. One thread titled, "This comic made me call my dad for the first time in years," hit the front page. A well-known parenting podcast featured the comic in their weekly roundup. By Friday evening, Liam had an email from a nonprofit that wanted to turn the work into a digital art series for their student mental health campaign. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was what happened offline. It started with a PDA mom, one of Rachel's own circle, someone who used to gush over her perfect boys and their college prep coaches. She messaged Liam directly through the site's contact form. "I just read your work. I recognized the twins instantly. You're brave, and I believe you. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Then came another, then 3 more. By Sunday, we counted 11 messages from people connected to Rachel's orbit. Teachers, parents, one ex-babysitter, each of them admitting they'd seen glimpses over the years. Moments of cruelty, dismissive comments, mocking laughter at others' expense. None of them had realized how deep it ran, or how much pain it caused. Liam responded to none of them directly. He didn't need to. The story spoke loud enough. We didn't tell Rachel. We didn't have to. She found out the way people like her hate to find out, by being excluded. The first sign was when a mutual cousin, Julia, unfollowed her on Instagram. Julia was the kind of person who'd once flown in just for Rachel's gender reveal party. Now, she shared Liam's comic on her story with the caption, "Support young artists who tell the truth." Then came the book club exit. Rachel had hosted the same wine and laugh circle for over 5 years. Suddenly, she wasn't invited to the new meetup at Cheryl's house. She texted Cheryl. Got no reply. Then she texted our mother. That's when the real storm hit. Rachel called me, fuming, the Monday after launch. I'd just gotten home from work and was microwaving leftovers when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Max," she snapped. "You need to take that disgusting site down right now." I stayed silent. Let her fill the space. I don't care if it's anonymous. Everyone knows it's about us. People are whispering. My boss's wife sent me a link and asked if it was true. "It is true," I said calmly. She scoffed. "You think this is justice? You're letting your kid smear our names like this." "I think," I said slowly, "that Liam finally found a voice loud enough for you to hear. Her voice rose a pitch. They're going to lose scholarships. The twins are already under review for housing violations because of your little project. That wasn't us, I said. That was your actions, finally seen in daylight. Do you know how hard I've worked to build our reputation? She hissed. Yes, I said. And you did it by stepping on everyone else. Especially my son. There was a long silence. Then, more quietly, she said, he should have just told me he was hurt. He did. You just laughed. Click. She didn't call again. The fallout wasn't instant, but it was steady. Over the next few weeks, Rachel's public persona began to splinter. Her friends distanced themselves. Her perfect family Facebook posts were met with uncomfortable silence or the occasional anonymous comment. Maybe check your cap and gown first. She tried damage control, of course. She posted a long-winded status about family disagreements and how jealousy can make people twist things. Claimed her boys were the real victims. That Liam was emotionally unstable and had always struggled socially. The comments roasted her. Someone linked the comic directly in the thread. He struggled because of you. Read this before you embarrass yourself further. The post was deleted an hour later. But by then, the damage was done. One of the twins lost his RA position at college after a quiet investigation revealed a pattern of peer hostility. Another had his student org leadership revoked. Small consequences in the grand scheme, but visible ones. And in their world, where image was everything, that visibility hurt more than anything. Meanwhile, Liam kept drawing. He turned his story into a full series, echoes after applause. Each chapter explored a new form of silence. Bystanders, fake smiles, toxic forgiveness. He never named names. Never had to. People felt it. One day, he got a package in the mail. It was a printed version of his zine, hardbound, high quality. No note inside. Just a sticky on the front that said, "For the shelf. For the next kid." He placed it in the living room bookcase, right between the giver and Persepolis. Liam never went to therapy. Not officially. But his art? That was his healing. And as for me, I got promoted. I didn't expect it. It came out of nowhere. The school board said they were restructuring and they needed someone with community credibility to oversee student wellness tech integration. Apparently, my presentation left an impression. They even asked if I'd consider helping develop a student feedback tool, something kids could use anonymously to report harassment. I said yes, because now, when a kid like Liam whispers that something feels wrong, someone like me will hear it. Our house is still quiet, still modest. Liam's room is a mess of sketch pads and crumpled thumbnails. My car still grinds on cold mornings. But the air feels lighter. The silence is no longer heavy. It's earned. I still see Rachel sometimes. At weddings, graduations, funerals. She doesn't look me in the eye. The twins never approach Liam. We exist in the same space, but not the same world anymore. And that's okay. Because when you spend your whole life being pushed to the edge, there's something liberating about finally jumping and realizing you had wings the whole time. Liam's comic now ends with a final panel. The boy stands alone, his graduation cap restored, inked with gold. Behind him, the shadows whisper. But he's walking forward, head high, pen in hand. Story, to be continued. And that's how we won. Quietly. With truth. One page at a time.